All right, let's get to it.
All right, the final step, people. This is Matthew's frame. He's a little undersized, but he's done a really nice job on doing the final sanding and stain and everything on here. We're ready to put the leather in. We're going to put the leather seat in. And for starters, we need to cut a piece of plumbing insulation pipe that I have over on the table there. This is cut just slightly under the width of the leather that you're going to use, just because we don't want it sticking out the side of the leather. And then it's just going to go around the seat portion of, or the seat rail, I guess rather. And it's going to be centered on here. And then the whole idea is that our leather seat is going to wrap around this bit of padding, and we're going to do a stitch along the back side here. Okay, so just to give you some perspective on exactly what it is that we want to achieve, this is what we're doing. Matthew's chosen his piece of leather. It's this beautiful oil tanned olive green color cowhide, and it's going to end up going over here like so. All right, and this is going to wrap around, and we're going to stitch it down here. All right. Okay. So here we are. We're at the bench. We're ready to start preparing to stitch this thing. I've got my piece of leather face down on the workbench, and I have a backing board underneath here just because I'm going to be using my punch tool, and it's going to go through, and I don't want to mark up my workbench. If you're doing this at home at your kitchen table, your mom probably doesn't want you putting all these marks into her kitchen table either. So here we go. Okay, leather goes down, and we're going to measure off here, first of all, 6.5 inches from the end. We're going to put a little mark. Okay, so I'm just going to measure here with my ruler. And then we're going to take a straight edge, and we're just going to connect the dots. Okay, and it's the back, so you're not going to see this, so don't be afraid. Get a nice sharp pencil and give yourself a good mark across the back here. If you guys can see that, I have a nice pencil line across the back at 6.5 inches from the end. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this thing over, and I'm going to line up the edge of the leather to the mark that I just put on there. Okay, and I'm going to drag this thing close to the end of my workbench. I'm going to put this board in here, just like so. And I'm actually going to clamp this in place. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. I got 3 clamps on here on a board, and that's holding this leather that's folded back up against my pencil mark nice and tight. I got my punch tool right here, and I'm going to start at one end, just slightly off the edge, about 1/8 of an inch, and about 1/8 of an inch back from the edge of my leather as well. And we're going to punch that down. Now the next one, I'm going to line up, I'm going to put the last punch in the last hole that I made to keep the spacing. All right, and there we go. We have a nice line of punched holes all the way along this leather right here. And we can go ahead and take off the clamps. Okay, so we're back. We've got our leather now laid in our stool just like this. Just a couple clamps on the top just to kind of hold it in place so it makes it easier for the first few stitches at least. And we've got our 2 lines of holes that are all punched and ready to go around this piece of foam padding here. So the next thing you guys have to do is choose what color thread you want. I've got a special waxed linen thread. I've got white and I got black, and Matthew's chosen black here for this. So you want a piece of thread about 8 feet long. So for me, that's a span and a bit, something like that. Okay? About 8 feet long. And we're going to take 2 of these large saddle needles, and we're going to put the thread through the eye. Bring it through about 3 inches or so, pinch it, give it a little twist. It's wax coated, right? So it actually like stays in place real nice. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on the other end with the other needle. I'm going to show you guys a special little stitch here that we're going to do. Okay, about 3 inches. Pinch it, give it a roll. There we go. Okay, so the first couple of stitches obviously are the hardest because we're going to try to get this thing to sit, properly. I want to make sure that that piece of foam padding is right in the middle of this thing, and I'm going to come through the first hole my saddle needle, and then up through from the back side. Okay, this first stitch is kind of like gets the ball rolling on the whole deal. So I'm going to draw that all the way through until I am halfway on this thing. All right, so I'm going to take both my needles. Okay, that's pretty good. I've got that thing nice and tight together. And now I'm ready to do the next step. So I've got the needle from the thread that came through from the top, and I'm just going to go through the next hole, and I'm going to go right downward again. And we're going to go through the next one as well. Okay, so just like you would, I think would be fairly intuitive to do on something like this. Now, the next step is to take the other one and come back up through the hole that you just went down with the other one. So if you can kind of imagine my fingers, I got my thread here, and I went through with one, and I'm coming back through with the other one too, and we're going to keep on going like this through each hole. Okay, so I'm going to come back up the hole that I just went down through. Okay, so once we have done that, we can pull this tight, and now it's starting to hold pretty well. Wherever the thread ended up last, so this one is the bottom thread, I'm going to just come back up through the very next one. And my top thread, I'm going back down again through the hole that I just came up through with my other one. Okay, and give it a pull. Oh, that's the deal. Back up, back down, all the way along. And what we can see here is a stitch that looks the same actually on both top and bottom. So now we're going to go through this whole thing all the way down, and we're just going to end up with, at the very end, we're going to end up having 2 strings both on the same side, and then we're just going to tie them off with a couple of half hitches. And that's going to be it, and we can trim those things off.